Hello, I'd like to start off by saying that I think we can all agree that we want the best educational services for our students here at Falls City. Matter of fact, for some time, the Board of Education has set down commitments, which include smaller class size, maintain a teacher in each grade level, a full-time PE teacher at the elementary, a full-time music teacher at the elementary, create special education programs that facilitates best practices, provide social and emotional learning programs, and also provide free athletics so that fees don't hinder student participation. We also have an initiative where we wanted to reopen the library, which we did 2 years ago. We also agree to monitor contracted services in areas of financial savings and seek grant opportunities. And then finally, professional development opportunities for all our staff to make sure and ensure that current best practices are being taught. But we also understand that we want to maintain local control as a priority and recruit and retain teachers. So what happened? It was really the perfect storm. It was a matter of 5 things. It was revenue losses for the last 5 years. It was revenue failure as far as receiving grant funding in a timely manner. It was deficit spending when it came to grants. It was special ed spending on what we couldn't anticipate with student enrollment. And then finally, it was just poor financial awareness. I mean, I'm going to tell you, for a small school our size, Falls City gives the best service per capita on kids. And, we've tried to maintain a 14-to-1 student-to-teacher ratio, and it's much lower than that when you look at all the peripheral things that we tried to do in the past. The problem is when you start looking at this expenditure, and we were sitting on fat time several years ago, and we were making decisions because we could make those services, and one of the big ones was collapsing combination classes. So every grade level had a teacher. But what happened was, by the time we did our final collapsing, 2 years later, we started showing losses in our general fund. I've included a graph for your perusal to show the trends of staff hires to student enrollment. In the state of Oregon, student enrollment is directly tied to state funds. As you'll be able to tell, you'll see where staff hires have been mirroring student growth until the year 2018-2019, where we topped off and then showed gradual decline while our staffing still remained the same. School fund is based on the number of students that come here, but it also is funded on the number of students that show up on a daily basis. And we do have an attendance issue that creates some funding issues down the road. We had 4 grants that we had applied for at the time last year that were awarded in a non-timely manner. Let me use 21st Century Grant for an example. 21st Century Grant funds a lot of our personnel with after-school programs, with FACES. We were awarded that grant, expected to award that grant in July. However, that grant was finally awarded in March. And so our general fund had to support that funding until that grant was finally awarded in March. There was other grants such as SIA, which is a student investment account that helps with a lot of our SEL programs, along with our credit recovery programs at the high school. The state decided to change how that was funded and push that out at the end of November, knowing that we had started school in September and our general fund monies had to offset those funds supporting personnel that were earmarked for those funds. Many of those funds were not funded till the end of the year, which allowed Falls City to go into deficit spending, where the carryover from the previous year couldn't support self-financing of those programs that were supported with those monies. The next issue was expenditures. Our total services increased. Projected average for expenses back in the budget season anticipated well over 112% average increase of all services. This includes utilities, subscriptions, insurance, legal, etc. We're going to have to be more creative about how those services are handled out to students because we know that they still need them. We're always going to fight for the students of Falls City and make sure and ensure they have an opportunity to get those programs that they deserve. One of the things that people like to pick up on is we've started this transportation department. And I don't think a lot of people realize that the past, when we did transportation through other companies, there was a lot of scheduling issues. We were limited on what we could do for field trips because of time and distance. But one of the last years we used a third party. They left our middle school track team at an event for an hour till they could come pick them up. And at that time, it was like, we got to do something better. And we decided to go pick up transportation on our own and service in-house. Because honestly, we go back to that feeling, who knows how to handle our students better than we do. We have also found that we're actually saving money by doing our own transportation. We paid out about $58,000 to our last vendor that handled transportation each year, and now it's costing us only $18,000 because we're getting the full-fledged reimbursement from the state. When I first came to Falls City, our special education population was only 9%. Last year, we raised up to 24%. There was also things through legislature that created budget implosions, such as the abbreviated school day law, which turned around and made me have to hire 4 people to support the needs of the district for the students that we had on abbreviated school day. We continue to grow in special ed as we anticipate our numbers to be well over 30, and currently at the state level, we're only funded for 11%. So anything above 11%, we have to fund out of general funds. And then finally, just poor financial awareness. We just didn't do our job right. Expenditures weren't recorded and reconciled correctly. Funds weren't transferred to support the loss that they're showing, especially in funds like ESSER or our child nutrition program, where the transfer should have been made from the general fund to support the losses in those funds, which we're going to have to offset and pay back. We don't have the human capital to cover the amount of time required to do accounting, and possible mistakes will happen. It puts a lot of pressure and extra time for those who are responsible to do their jobs correctly. Moving forward, the business office was dismantled at the end of their contracts, and the contract with the WSD for all business solutions was initiated in July 1. WSD audited all our accounting practices for the last 2 fiscal years, which took over 3 months to handle. We've revised the budget. Budget cuts were made to support a 10% carryover for this fiscal year. The audit for this year has been complete with minimal findings. The next budget season starts soon. Be a part of those conversations. Come to board meetings. Volunteer to sit in budget committees. Starting January 1st, board meetings will be videoed. Attend in person or listen to discussions and decisions that are happening along the way. Many times people want to know, Mr. Ellis, how can you assure that this isn't going to happen? Technically, I can't assure you that it won't happen down the road, and this is what I mean. Falls City has been down this road before, 1991, early 2000s. Falls City's budget reflected what the economy was like at the time. Luckily, we still have board members that know historical precedents and actions that transpired at the time. Folks, I'd like to remind you, we are only 2 years away from COVID. The inflation costs have not gone down. Meals at fast food restaurants for families are well over $50. Sit-down restaurants for meals for 2 are well over $50. We are seeing the same thing in school business. While I can't sit there and assure you that this isn't going to happen again, what I can assure you on is that we have the best people in the business with years of practical and historical experience at the helm to ensure that we are correct at this point and that we can move on. And while we are here, the board and myself, we can make sure that these items aren't going to happen within this time frame. Falls City isn't an isolated case on financial issues. Currently, Ashland, Corbett, Lake Oswego, Newburgh are all reporting similar issues. There have been other districts considering mid-year budget cuts as well. When I was hired by the board, I was hired knowing that I was going to have to examine programs and budgets. Budget cuts were initiated all along the way. However, since COVID, the needs of students have changed, and so has the price tag for ensuring our students receiving the best services possible. The right decisions aren't necessarily popular. I've taken responsibility for the mess. I've also taken responsibility for fixing it. We anticipate that this isn't going to be a quick fix. We know that payroll is anticipating a 25 to 27% increase in PERS and taxes next year. We still have to be lean in the future to carry out current financial obligations. I hope that you would all that have questions would come in, sit down, and have a visit with me specifically about questions that you might have arrived. I also hope that you start attending board meetings via Zoom or in person. And again, I'd like to remind you that all board meetings will be recorded as a video for your reviewing. Thank you for your time.